What is going on, my crazy 76er fanatics? Thanks for stopping back in for another daily pod with your daily 76ers discourse and discussion. Guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe because you leave a comment or two. We read more than a few, guys. We address and read all of your comments, so make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, guys. And today we're going to be talking about what has Daryl been thinking? Guys, what the heck has Daryl Morey been up to? I'm not sure if you guys heard about the trade rumors that the Sixers may be interested in Anthony Simons. I'm not sure if you heard that Quentin Grimes still has refused to sign. And I'm not sure if you're aware that Tyrese Maxey is the leader of this team and now the face and the focal point of this organization. Guys, what is Daryl Morey thinking? He's thinking about how to save his job. He's thinking about how he can save his job. You got to remember, this is a Daryl Morey who at one point was the most sought after GMs and general managers in the NBA and on the open market. This is a Daryl Morey who is looked at as a pioneer, as a genius for analytic basketball and how to win with numbers and the eye test. This is a Daryl Morey who has fallen quite short and quite far from the general manager and a management greatness we all expected and believed was going to come in Philly with a Daryl Morey acquisition. Daryl's trying to save his job right now, guys, because Daryl seems lost. After the whole James Harden calling him a liar, saying that he'd never sign with them, other all-stars like Chris Paul, other players in the NBA like Markieff Morris, even LeBron James has some stories about Daryl Morey just being a little weird and not necessarily understanding the people or the person behind the player. Daryl Morey is not looking like a great GM for this Philadelphia 76ers team because this is a huge market. This is a big market city. And the big market player that Daryl Morey signed to a max contract, Paul George, he offered him a max contract and he was the only team, the only roster, the only squad in the NBA who had the pieces, the money, and the playing/winning potential to even offer Paul George a max contract. Basically, guys, he outbidded himself there, which does not seem like general manager greatness. It seems like ignorance. It seems like a guy who's not only trying to save face in this league, but rebuild his brand, rebuild his name in the league. So for name's sake and for his sake, he gave Paul George an unwarranted, an unnecessary, and definitely an unearned max contract. That is looking like one of the worst contracts in Philadelphia history. So what is Daryl Morey thinking? How do I clean up this mess that I made? How do I clean up this mess that I made? Well, one thing we got to talk about, guys, is the mess and the mistake that Daryl Morey made in the draft. Because Daryl has gone through the ringer in Philadelphia. He had to go through the Ben Simmons, I guess, lock-in, not playing, but kind of playing, but showing up, but not participating stuff. That was strange. And he also made a mistake during the draft, guys. The Sixers, and this is going to go down in history, and you mark my words, this will go down in history as one of the biggest mistakes in Philadelphia 76er draft history, which is hard to even say because it's the same team that drafted Markelle Fultz over Jason Tatum. This is the same team that drafted Nerlens Noel, Jahlil Okafor, and Joel Embiid in back-to-back drafts. This is the same team, guys, that has seemed oblivious and clueless when it has come down to draft class success. But the biggest mistake made is you see it. This team decided not to take a generational talent. This team decided not to take Ace Bailey. Now, the rumors and reports about that are surrounding that Ace Bailey threatened with a really big threat, and he had a lot of leverage in this, that he was not going to report to the Sixers. He was not going to show up to this team at all, and he was going to reclass for next year and fall wherever he fell in the draft. Now, the reason that does make a lot of sense is because Ace Bailey is already a millionaire, guys. This NIL money is changing the game. It is changing the player empowerment and how much power these players have. He was going to sit out a year and potentially not play for the Philadelphia 76ers squad at all, which would have been a draft pick wasted, which also would have gone down as a huge general manager mistake, a huge problem if your third overall pick doesn't show up. But my problem is, as a general manager, that's your job, man. Your job is to make players want to come play for you. Your job is to make these difficult conversations easy to have. Your job is to smooth over all of the issues that all of your future stars, potential stars, and players have. Your job is to make sure this locker room is tight-knit. Your job is to make sure there's no problems within the organization and no noise that's sneaking outside the organization that's creating problems. That's your job, Daryl. And because Daryl's no good at his job, because Daryl does not have connections, relationships with players like he's supposed to, with general managers like he needs to, because Daryl doesn't have the connections and the pool that he once had, he went with the safe pick. He went with the guy who said, I'll do any and everything you ask me to do. Now, that is a player and that is a position and a disposition this team has not had in quite a long time. This team has not had a player come in saying, I'm willing and ready to do any and everything with the athletic and potential to be able to do any and everything. So I do see why Daryl did draft VJ Edgecombe, because he is a blank piece of paper with a lot of potential to do greatness and be great. But he's not better than Ace Bailey, guys. He's not right now. VJ Edgecombe is not better than Ace Bailey. He's not more prepared. His offensive game tape, his offensive ability is not better than Ace Bailey's. Guys, his upside and his ceiling just is not better than Ace Bailey's. The draft pick that Daryl Morey made, again, was another face-saving draft pick to save his job. That is what Daryl's thinking. Daryl's also thinking about trading for Anthony Simons. The stuff we're hearing coming out of the Sixer front office is ludicrous. But Daryl is also thinking about trading for Anthony Simons. What does all these trade rumors mean? Trading for Anthony Simons, potentially trading for Andre Drummond, or trading away Andre Drummond. Guys, this means that Daryl Morey is no longer willing to go all in. If you're trading Anthony Simons or trading for Anthony Simons, you're no longer willing and ready to go all in, because Anthony Simons is not the missing piece this team needs. Anthony Simons is not the piece in the hole this team needs to fill. He's a point guard. He's a shooting guard. He's a lockdown and a heavy on-ball scorer. Guys, he's not a power forward. He's not the missing piece. If you look at this team for face value, what they have so far, they have probably the deepest backcourt in the NBA. Why would you add another high usage, high workload, 3-point floor spacer if you already have what's rumored to be one of the deepest backcourts in the NBA? It just shows that Daryl does not believe this team is ready to make a championship push this year, or maybe he's just not sure if they can. And with that being said, the reason you would trade and what these trade rumors means, because Anthony Simons only has 1 year left on his $27 million deal, it means Daryl wants some of his money back. Daryl wants some more leverage. Daryl wants more opportunity to make moves, trades, and maybe get off of some of these bad contracts next year. Because if you sign Anthony Simons, if you take on Anthony Simons this year, somehow, some way, you're able to get off that contract next year. Maybe you re-sign Anthony for a similar valuation. Maybe Anthony Simons does prove to be the missing piece. Maybe Anthony Simons, Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe. I assume Quentin Grimes would not be a part of this future if you are getting Anthony Simons. Who knows, guys? But I can tell you one thing. It's all about the money with Daryl. It's always been about the money. Money with Daryl. Every dollar counts in this new CBA. Every stinking nickel matters to that first and second apron, because it does limit the amount of trades, players you can acquire, and moves you can just make on the open market. I think Daryl wants some of his money back. Just being the analytic mindset that Daryl has always had, just being the finance first general manager that Daryl Morey has always been, I'm pretty sure that all these trades mean that Daryl does not think that this season is the season this team will be winning a championship. So let's open up some cap space. Let's give us some leverage to maneuver next season by signing a guy or trading for a guy who has 1 year left with a huge lump sum of cap space going there. Maybe Daryl was planning on trading Paul George for Anthony Simons. Maybe he was. Maybe he will. Who knows? I can tell you one thing, though. An Anthony Simons trade, because of his contract evaluation, assuming Joel's not going anywhere, assuming Tyrese Maxey isn't going anywhere, and assuming that if you're going to trade Paul George for Anthony Simons, they're going to have to give up another additional piece to make that contract and make the money work. I don't see Paul George going anywhere for a 2-for-1, because this team doesn't have the player space, doesn't have the open space for a player, for 2 players, 3 players. I see Anthony Simons being traded to a third team, so the Sixers can get off some of these players that they don't need, like Andre Drummond, maybe like Kelly Oubre. And if you trade Andre Drummond and trade Kelly Oubre in an Anthony Simons trade with a third party like the Nets, you sign Precious Achiuwa. This team needs a power forward. Daryl Morey's no dummy. Daryl Morey can see. I don't know if he wears glasses or not, but Daryl Morey's probably got 20/20 vision. He knows this team needs a power forward. If you do, trade for Anthony Simons, which is a player you probably be getting off immediately. It's just to get rid of these players you've been trying to get off of all summer. Maybe making these trades just a little more advantageous for other organizations. Andre Drummond could be gone. Kelly Oubre could be gone. Those are players that we haven't heard much praise about. We haven't heard much about their future, much of their future outlook with this team. And this team does need a power forward. It's quite obvious. A power forward this team is comfortable with. A power forward this team can get used to. How about him? Say his name once. Precious Achiuwa. Precious Achiuwa already has not only camaraderie and understanding of a Nick Nurse offense and defensive scheme and system. Guys, Precious Achiuwa at one point was a problem-some defender for a Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid has always struggled with smaller physical defenders who can get underneath him and stop him from putting the ball on the ground. Precious Achiuwa was a pretty good Joel Embiid defender for many points and many stints throughout his career. I think in recent years, Joel's gotten the better of him. And in recent years, Joel's gotten the better and the best of anyone and everyone. That's what Joel's going to do. But Precious Achiuwa could be a perfect piece to fill out this roster because he can stretch the floor, he can shoot the three, he can rebound, he can defend. And a Precious Achiuwa and an Adem Bona mixed and matched power forward center lineup, you're bringing a lot of physicality, you're bringing a lot of force, and you're bringing a lot of hustle and effort for two guys who work extremely hard on both ends of the ball. They're probably going to sign Precious Achiuwa if they can. But this all happens after Daryl Morey makes some game time moves, some game time decisions this offseason. Because Daryl Morey does not think that this team is ready for the playoffs, for a championship push. And you can just tell by his maneuvers, by his conversations, by the players he's signing and re-signing. You don't give Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon two roster spots, unless you know this team is too young and too green to really make the push for themselves and by themselves. That's why you add the veterans to the roster. That's why you keep the veteran presence and the on-court coaches in the locker room, because this team just isn't ready in the eyes of Daryl Morey. And it's pretty obvious. And I'm not sure if Daryl Morey's ready to be fired or not, but these next few moves and this next season is going to determine if Daryl's going to be in Philadelphia for a few more years to come, or if Daryl Morey's going to be out of the league. Guys, like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me what you think about Daryl Morey. Tell me what you think about the trade, the signing, and what does Anthony Simons, Precious Achiuwa, where do you think they land? Because Boston does not want Anthony Simons, and I think Anthony in the Eastern Conference, the Leastern Conference, the weaker conference, Anthony Simons could be an all-star. He has that play potential. All right, guys, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the name, you know the game, and we read more than a few. We read all of your comments, so make sure you leave more than two, because we will be reading everything you guys leave down below. Like, comment, and subscribe, guys.